I remember the exact moment our tires crunched over the last stretch of unpaved road leading to our new slice of heaven. That 20-acre parcel in the heart of Arizona's high desert near Redstone Basin. The air thick with the scent of creosote bushes after a rare summer rain. The kind that makes the whole landscape feel alive and washed clean. And as Lena leaned her head out the window, wind whipping her hair, laughing about how we'd finally escaped the city's chokehold. No more nosy neighbors. No more endless emails about yard maintenance or parking permits. Just pure, unadulterated freedom on land that was ours and ours alone. No homeowners association breathing down our necks. No covenants dictating the color of our mailbox or the height of our fences. And I glanced to the rear view at Caleb and Maya in the back seat. Their faces smeared with road trip snacks. Eyes wide with that mix of exhaustion and excitement that only kids can pull off. And I thought, yeah, this is it. This is the reset we've been chasing. The place where we can build our life on our terms. Watch the sunsets stretch forever without a single streetlight interrupting the stars. We'd spent months scouting properties, poring over maps and deeds in stuffy real estate offices, making sure every I was dotted, every boundary line crystal clear because we'd heard the horror stories. Friends trapped in suburban hells where HOAs ruled like petty tyrants. And we weren't about to fall into that trap. So when the title search came back clean, confirming our plot was fully private, exempt from any association since its original survey back in the 80s, we signed on the dotted line, packed up our old life, and drove straight into what should have been paradise, unloading boxes under a sky so blue it almost hurt, Caleb immediately darting off to explore the rocky outcrops, yelling about finding arrowheads, Maya setting up her easel to capture the jagged silhouette of the distant mountains, and Lena and I sharing one of those quiet smiles that say more than words ever could, the kind born from years of shared dreams finally touching down in reality. But paradise has a way of cracking open sometimes, revealing the snakes underneath. It started with the distant hum of an engine, growing louder, insistent, cutting through the peaceful clatter of us settling in. And when I looked up from stacking firewood near the old well, there it was, a gleaming white SUV kicking up dust as it approached, the side emblazoned with the logo of Canyon Crest Estates Homeowners Association, a name I'd seen on signs a good half-mile back, but dismissed as irrelevant, since our deed placed us well outside their manicure domain, and, as the vehicle, pulled to a stop just inside our gate. Our gate, mind you. The doors swung open, and out stepped this woman, mid-50s maybe, dressed in khaki pants and a polo shirt with the association's emblem stitched over her heart, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, clipboard in hand, exuding that kind of manufactured confidence that sets your teeth on edge. And behind her lumbered a burly guy in a matching uniform labeled Canyon Crest Security, arms crossed, try to look intimidating but mostly just coming off as bored. She didn't waste time on pleasantries, didn't ask if we were the new owners or offer a welcome basket like in those feel-good movies. Instead, she marched right up, heels sinking slightly into the soft dirt, and declared in a voice clipped and authoritative, as if reading from a script she'd rehearsed in the mirror, "You're trespassing on association-managed property. You have exactly 15 minutes to gather your belongings and vacate, or we'll have to involve the authorities." The words, hanging in the air like a bad joke, but her face was dead serious, eyes narrowing as if daring me to argue. And I stood there for a beat, processing the hammer I'd been using to nail down a loose board still in my hand, feeling the weight of it suddenly heavier because this couldn't be right. This had to be some mix-up, some overzealous neighbor mistaking our land for theirs. I set the hammer down slowly, wiped my hands on my jeans, and tried to keep my voice even, though inside my mind was racing, replaying every detail of the closing documents, the surveyor's stakes we double-checked just last week. And I said, "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake. This is private property. We got the deed right here." Reaching into the truck's cab for the folder we kept handy, pulling out the crisp pages with the official stamps from Maricopa County Recorder, the plat. Maps showing our boundaries in bold black lines, clear as day, no overlap with Canyon Crest or any other development. But she barely glanced at them, pushed her sunglasses down over her eyes, and shook her head, saying, "These are outdated. Our association has expansion rights under the original master plan. This area falls under our administrative jurisdiction now. Her tone so matter-of-fact, it almost convinced me for a split second, but then the absurdity hit. Because expansion rights? Administrative jurisdiction? Those weren't terms in our title report. Those were buzzwords pulled from thin air. And when I pressed, asking for her documentation, her proof, she just waved vaguely at the SUV, as if the logo alone was evidence enough. That's when her security guy decided to get involved, stepping forward with a grunt, reaching out to grab the edge of our moving trailer, muttering something about securing the premises, and I felt this surge of protective instinct flare up, hot and immediate, because Lena had just come out onto the porch with Maya, clinging to her leg, Caleb frozen midway across the yard, and no stranger gets to lay hands on our things. Not on our land, not in front of my family. So I moved quick, blocking his path, voice dropping low. You touch that and we're going to have a problem. The tension coiling tight like a spring, his hand hovering, eyes flicking to Vivian Caldwell. That's what her name tag said. Vivian Caldwell, safety and compliance share. For direction, and she nodded sharply, but before he could escalate, I pulled out my phone, dialed 911, because this wasn't a debate anymore. This was intrusion. This was threat. And as the dispatcher connected, I explained calmly, address, situation, requesting deputies for a trespassing dispute, all while Vivian started talking over me into her own phone, calling what I assumed were her reinforcements, the air thick with standoff, the kid's wide eyes burning into my back, fueling that deep, unshakable resolve to protect what's ours. The deputies arrived in a cloud of dust, 2 cruisers pulling up with lights flashing, but no sirens, officers stepping out with that practiced neutrality law enforcement perfects, badges shining under the relentless sun, and after IDs were checked, stories heard. Hers first, full of indignation about encroachment and community standards, mine backed by the folder of documents. They ran the parcel number through their system, radioed the county recorder for confirmation, and within 20 minutes, the lead deputy turned to Vivian, face impassive, and laid it out plain. This land is private, ma'am, not part of your association. You're the ones who need to leave. The words cutting through her protests like a knife, her face flushing red as the security guy shuffled back to the SUV, and as they drove off, tail between their legs, the humiliation palpable in the stiff set of her shoulders. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding, but even then, watching their taillights fade, I felt this nagging twist in my gut because people like Vivian don't just admit defeat, they regroup, they retaliate, and I knew, deep down, this was only the opening salvo. The next few weeks blurred into an uneasy rhythm. Mornings spent hammering together the framework for our off-grid solar setup. Afternoons exploring the land with the kids, teaching Caleb how to identify edible prickly pear, watching Maya fill sketchbooks with the vibrant chaos of wildflowers blooming after the rain, evenings around a campfire with Lena, stars wheeling overhead, talking about dreams for a small garden, maybe some chickens, the simple joys we'd traded city stress for. But underneath it all lurked this shadow, this anticipation of the next move, because Vivian didn't disappear. She pivoted, shifting from direct confrontation to a barrage of paperwork designed to wear us down without ever setting foot on our property again. It started with the mail, certified letters arriving like clockwork, envelopes thick with pseudo-official jargon from Canyon Crest Estates Homeowners Association, notifying us of accumulated fines totaling $8,000 for non-compliance with architectural guidelines and unauthorized improvements, attached to a crudely drawn map that redrew boundaries like a wishful thinker's fantasy, swallowing our 20 acres whole under something called administrative incorporation, a term so invented it didn't even Google properly, and I'd sit at the kitchen table late at night, porch light buzzing with moths, poring over these documents, chuckling darkly at the audacity, because it was almost funny in a twisted way how someone could fabricate authority out of thin air. But the humor faded when I thought about liens, about clouded titles, about the real damage unchecked lies could inflict on our fresh start. Then the smears ramped up, flyers materializing overnight on our gateposts, distributed door to door in Canyon Crest, bold headlines blaring community alert, illegal squatters endangering neighborhood safety. with grainy photos of our unpacked boxes labeled as hazardous debris, accusations of unpermitted structures that were just our temporary RV hookup, and I felt the isolation creep in, delivery trucks turning around at the sight of the signs, local contractors ghosting our calls after, hearing rumors, the unfairness gnawing at me like a persistent itch because we weren't squatters, we were owners, dreamers, a family trying to build something real. And here was one woman, armed with a printer and a grudge, poisoning the well. Nights turned restless after that, headlights tracing our fence line in slow arcs, never crossing but always watching, the crunch of gravel under tires at odd hours, and one evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the desert in oranges and purples, our new motion sensor lights flicked on, capturing a figure, Vivian herself, standing just beyond the wire, phone raised, recording our home like evidence for some imaginary trial. Her silhouette stark against the twilight, and I stepped out, heart pounding, shouted across the divide, "This is harassment, you know that?" But she just smiled, that same tight-lipped grin from day one, and drove off, leaving me seething, the violation lingering like smoke. But anger, when it's righteous, becomes fuel, and I wasn't about to let her narrative stand unchallenged, so I invested in a full surveillance system. Trail cams hidden in the junipers, dash cams on our vehicles, even a drone for aerial overviews, documenting every pass, every flyer, every letter with timestamps and geotags, building a digital fortress of evidence. And then I dove deeper, spending days at the Maricopa County Recorder's office, eyes straining over flickering microfilm reels, unearthing the association's founding documents from 1989, board minutes from 1991 explicitly carving out our parcel as exempt, a deliberate exclusion to preserve access to federal lands beyond, signed by the original developers. Never amended. The paper yellowed, but the intent ironclad. Armed with that, I layered in modern GIS data from the county's online portal, overlaying official plats against Vivian's hand-scribbled map, and the revelation hit like lightning. Their expansion not only fabricated but criminal, because 4 of Canyon Crest's newest luxury homes encroached on Bureau of Land Management territory, public ground sold as private lots, dues collected on illusions. And I sat back in the dim records room, fluorescent lights humming overhead, feeling the shift, the power tilting, because this wasn't just defense anymore, this was exposure. I compiled it all, scans, screenshots, affidavits, into a thick dossier, mailed certified copies to the county prosecutor's office with a detailed complaint alleging fraud, forgery, and systematic harassment, CC'd the Arizona Attorney General for good measure, and drafted a cease and desist letter through an online legal service, demanding an end to the contacts or face escalation. And for the first time since that SUV appeared, I felt proactive, the love for my family sharpening my focus, turning fear into strategy. Vivian felt it too. Her next voicemail cracking with urgency, threats laced with a hint of plea, but instead of backing off, she escalated wildly, setting up a pop-up kiosk at the county road intersection, a folding table draped in Canyon Crest banners, stacks of pamphlets decrying our aggressive takeover, a tip jar for legal defense funds, even a QR code linking to a crowdfunding page painting us as bullies. And she'd sit there on weekends, sun hat flapping in the breeze, engaging passersby. With tales of community peril, her persistence almost admirable if it weren't so unhinged, the dark comedy of it all making me shake my head as I drove by. But the stakes were too high for laughter alone. The unraveling began quietly, a local blogger picking up the scent from an anonymous tip. Our drone footage leaked to a subreddit on HOA nightmares, and suddenly Elena Vasquez from the Arizona Desert Chronicle was knocking on doors, her investigative series, Boundaries of Deception, splashing across front pages, juxtaposing Vivian's fake maps with county originals, quoting disgruntled ex-residents about rigged elections and phantom fees, the GIS overlays projected in full color, exposing the federal land grab. And as shares exploded online, YouTube reactors dissecting the drama in viral videos titled, HOA Karen Gets Wrecked by Facts. The public tide turned, comments flooding with support for us, outrage at the overreach, the isolation we'd felt dissolving into solidarity. Former board members emerge from the shadows, gray-haired retirees who've been ousted for questioning budgets, spilling about Vivian's family stacking the deck. Her brother as treasurer, cousin as vice chair, patterns of abuse stretching back years, arbitrary fines for minor infractions like unapproved flower beds, threats of foreclosure over disputed dues, the whole operation a web of control masquerading as community. And with each testimony, the case built, the prosecutor's office taking. Notice, subpoenas flying for records, emails, financials. The arrest came at dawn, sheriff's deputies surrounding Vivian's gated home. Irony thick as the morning fog. Warrant in hand for fraud, forgery, conspiracy, harassment. Her husband caught on our cams mid-act, shifting markers. The evidence irrefutable. And as she was let out in cuffs, protesting innocence to no one listening. The empire she'd built on paper crumbled, the association's assets seized. Audits revealing embezzled funds funneled into personal accounts. The courtroom was packed for the hearing, wooden benches creaking under the weight of onlookers. Vivian at the defense table looking diminished, her polish cracked as prosecutors played the montage. Forged seals under blacklight, GIS fraud highlighted in red, surveillance clips rolling frame by frame, internal emails admitting the creative mapping, and the judge, gavel poised, declared the HOA dissolved, every fine nullified, refunds ordered, criminal charges sticking like burrs. Vivian pleading down to 8 years, her accomplices facing their own reckonings. Closure came in waves. The new boundary markers poured in concrete, bright and official. Our land secure. Caleb and Maya playing freely again, Lena planting that garden weed dreamed of, evenings peaceful once more, the desert winds carrying away the last echoes of conflict, the system, slow, bureaucratic, but ultimately just, delivering what persistence demanded, a testament to how truth, when armed with evidence, topples even the most entrenched lies. Yet, in the quiet moments, staring at those stars that once witnessed our siege, questions linger, unresolved. Was Vivian a monster or a product of a system that rewards unchecked ambition? Did we triumph through sheer will, or because we had the tools, cameras, lawyers' time, that others lack? Where does community governance end and personal tyranny begin? And if silence had won, if we'd folded under the pressure, would the fraud have continued, claiming more victims in the shadows? I don't pretend to have all the answers, only the certainty that bullies feed on acquiescence, that facts forge the unbreakable barriers, and that defending your family's peace sometimes means dismantling the fences others build around you.